Car meditation. So in the gym, two younger guys, they kind of seemed to be floating everywhere while I was floating too. And they asked me, said, hey, OG, I asked you a question. I said, yeah, what's up, brother? He said, man, he's like, I know you older than us. He like, you like 30 something? I said, nah. I said, I'm 45. He was like, 45? He's like, man, how you stay looking like that, 45? He's like, man, he like, my dad like 40, 42, he don't look like that. And I said, man, I'm gonna tell you first thing that comes to my mind, as I said, looking at years and years of work, bro. I said, years and years of work. I said, I think I've only taken a break maybe once or twice in my life. And I said, when I say break, meaning I wasn't in the gym hardcore like I used to. I'm still at home doing like push-ups and body weight squats and stuff of that nature. But I said, man, years of work. And I said, how old are y'all? Niggas like, one was like 21, the other one was like 24. And I said, man, and I said, to be honest with you, I said, when I was younger, I said, I didn't eat a lot of garbage, man. I said, I was a vegetarian my teen years up until my mid-20s. And I said, I didn't eat out a lot, bro. And I said, when I did eat out a lot, I said, I was eating at, Middle Eastern restaurants, Greek restaurants. I said, I wasn't no Burger King, Donald kind of guy, man. Even my teenage years, I said, none of my guys were. I said, we would eat at, I said, maybe one of my guys would grab a fry or something here and there at McDonald's. But I said, we ate at like those little hole in the wall Ethiopian restaurants and stuff like that. And I said, we ate a lot of falafels and stuff like that. So I said, Chinese, we'd be in Chinatown eating food, and then we would get off the train and walk from like Harold Washington Library to Navy Pier, just kicking it, talking, putting together things, building and stuff like that. So I said, we stayed pretty active. I said, on top of that, we stayed in the dojo. So it's like, I said, each one of us stayed in a different martial arts. So I said, I said, in our younger years, man, I said, we wasn't really basically fucking off our body. I said, my guys, they may have smoked, but they knew not to smoke around me because I didn't do that. I said, we wasn't, drinking to the morning and, to the sun come, we wasn't doing a lot of stuff that a lot of other young people did, and even our peers, but today, a lot of my peers that I ran with, the 20 to 30, 50 guys that I ran with back then, we not taking pills and, and had strokes and, and one thing my brother had like a mild arrhythmia or something like that, where he had to like get himself together. But it's like, other than that, man, we not dealing with a lot of things because in our youth, we put the work in. And then from my mid-20s to and beyond, I was training hardcore. I started working out at 19. When I say working out, I mean hitting the iron and everything, hitting the weights. I said, but before that, I mean, we walked everywhere. We went, caught buses and trains. Man, we martial arts. We run the track barefoot before we sparred and stuff like that. And it's like then in my later years, like from 20 on up, is when the iron came in my life. And then it was like iron, martial arts, iron, martial arts, iron, martial arts. And then as I approached my 30s, I was a bodybuilder. I was competing heavy, eating clean, eating right, and everything like that. Still not eating out a lot. I've eaten out. I've eaten in more restaurants in my 40s than I did my whole life. It's like, so eating clean. Then as a powerlifter, and I'm cooking, eating, and it's like I did all the cooking, and very rarely was I sitting down in somebody's restaurant. But if you do your homework, you'll find that, the Jay Cutlers and the Ronnie Colemans and the C-Bums and, all the great Phil Heaths and, and all them, a lot of them, they don't eat out. They don't eat out. They prep their own food. And that's how they stay in that condition. We know it's other things that keep them, looking the way they look for competition. But as far as their health-wise, they stay eating the same things, cooking and eating the same things. The health and fitness thing is very, 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 very boring. Very, very boring and straightforward. And to have the goals and results that you want and being at your peak, gotta stay close to the right things that you put in your body. So any and everything new that come out at these fast food spots, I don't know about it. People will tell me I don't know about them. And maybe on a day it's a cheat day or something like that, or an off day, I may or may not try something. But it's like, for the most part, you're looking at years of me staying consistent with doing the course of what I needed to do to get the results that I wanted in life. And that's the key: consistency and discipline. And discipline, you cannot have strong discipline, but if you get up and do something every day, you're gonna get better at it, and your discipline will grow. The discipline comes in when that clock go off and you're like, I don't want to get up. Oh, come on, man. I don't want to get up. And I got to go to work after that. Or then I got to run these kids to school. Or I got to cook breakfast. I don't want to get up. I'm going to go anyway. You put on your shoes. Put on your jacket. It's cold outside. You open the door. It's snowing. You like, You go to the car. Start the car up. You're in the car waiting for it to warm up. You may be drinking a shake or eating a snack, or or shaking your shake up to be ready for when you get out, hoping it don't freeze. And then you go to the gym and you work out, or you go and take a class and you work out, and it's the best feeling in the world after you walk out and you come out and you all that shake down, or you eat your food and you're like, man. Then the rest of your day you're feeling good, and you're like, oh man, that was good. I'm glad I got up and worked out this morning. Glad I went to that class. Glad I went to the gym. That's discipline. That's discipline. Doing it when you don't want to freaking do it. So stood there for about good 10 minutes talking to these brothers off and on in between sets. And they was just like, man. And I told them, I said, y'all in a different time where a lot of things are built to attack and destroy your body. So y'all should be getting on course even more so than I was. Because stuff was still kind of, I'm going to these restaurants where they cooking vegan food back then, and falafel sandwiches, and, Greek and Middle Eastern food, and, these foods were still sense of pure, pure vegetables and everything. Wasn't worrying about GMO back then. But now you have to worry about GMO. Now you have to worry about them putting additives and addictives and stuff in food to keep you hooked, because they know people are getting more on a healthy kick. So, and they was just like, man, OG, it's like, and I was like, man, more people now. You see dialysis centers popping up everywhere. You see cancer centers popping up everywhere. You see all these things. You see it's changing because they know that the institutions are doing things to get people to those places for monetary gain. So it's like, and that was something that we did too. We stayed reading. We stayed up on knowledge of things. We stayed going to, different conferences and fairs. And yes, I was a teenager. That's why I tell people all the time, I came here a different kind of kid. But it's like we stayed on top of those things. We cared about our health. We was reading these things and going to getting these conscious magazines and going and listening to, brothers talk about how to eat to live, and we was fighting for it back then. So, future generations, 20-somethings, teenagers, now it's your time. I'm fighting for my life at this age. Now it's your time, and I'm gonna leave you with that. Peace. Fight for your life.